Greetings, all! Today, we'll be examining the common electric-type Pokémon Voltorb and the relatively rare evolution Electrode, collectively known as the Ball Pokémon, as well as their electric grass-type Hisuian variants, collectively known as the Sphere Pokémon. While their forms might seem a bit too simplistic to really take notice of and fear right away, the members of the Voltorb family handily prove that great danger can lay in the most unassuming of packages.
As they stand, Voltorb have a very simple form, having spherical, ball-shaped bodies modeled after a standard Pokeball, with a red upper half and lower white half, along with a set of pinprick black eyes that are usually shaped in a scowl from their constant state of unstable anger. They have a Hisuian variant whose form is similar, but with a more natural reddish-orange coloring on the top and beige underside, and the woody outer forms have eye ridges carved above their eyes that give them a friendlier-looking appearance. Their evolved form, Electrode, have this color scheme switched, with white on top and red on bottom, and are known for having a large, toothy grin that belittles their immense destructive capabilities. These creatures too have a Hisuian variant with the same general flipped color scheme, but their eye ridges and mouth are carved in such a way as to give them a scowl that more accurately reflects their destructive power.
The origins of both Voltorb and Electrode have been shrouded in mystery for some time, but recent revelations have revealed that these creatures are actually somewhat biomechanical in nature, existing as living mimics.
It is unknown exactly what sort of form they may have had originally, but it seems that these creatures have taken on the form of standard Pokeballs throughout the history of those devices for two principal reasons. For one thing, the earliest iteration of these creatures took to the form of the Pokeball readily when it was introduced to them in some form as a way of dispersing the forms across vast distances. This makes sense as the earliest captured devices were used by explorers in order to help keep Pokemon close to their side as they traveled. This meant that these creatures could spread the populations far and wide across oceans in this way, helping to disperse their forms across many different tracts of land and even continents. Secondly, it is likely that they have taken on this form in order to help protect themselves against attack, as wild Pokemon are less likely to attack anything that resembles a device that could potentially capture them and leave them stranded inside of the device. While this likely was not meant to be of great issue at first, standard Voltorb seem to have eventually developed the capacity to transform themselves beyond just being mimics, mutating and developing into Electrode, a far stronger, more dangerous variant that is less mimic than it is fully fledged independent organism, and this shift in form also marks a shift in personality to go with it, for better or for worse.
As a result of the tempered outer shell of their body and the electricity that flows through every part of their form, these creatures are able to possess the soundproof and static abilities as base abilities, while those that are more volatile than normal and tend to blow up even if they've been knocked out cold can also possess Aftermath as a hidden ability.
As far as the stats are concerned in the case of Electrode, these creatures rely a bit too much on their more explosive natures in battle for protection than they do anything else, and as a result, most of the base stats are below average for a fully evolved electric-type Pokemon. However, they're able to use their internal electrical power to move extremely fast on the ground, so the base speed stat is at least above average for a fully evolved Pokemon of their type, and also grants them the highest base speed stat out of all non-legendary electric-type Pokemon, so they at the very least have that much on their side.
While Voltorb may give little to no explanation for their actions, what is clear is that these creatures are incredibly dangerous to be around.
Voltorb are packed with so much electricity that the slightest contact with them can cause instant electrocution. Considering that they feed on electricity for energy, this doesn't come as a very surprising fact, and also explains why they are naturally drawn to power plants and other large sources of electrical energy like major cities. The real issue is that Voltorb are always packed with the maximum amount of electricity that bodies can hold safely, and often exceed that capacity. This seems to be a product of a natural paranoia towards protecting themselves, and want to keep as much electricity on them as possible in case of an emergency. When the circuits of Voltorb Electrode experience a surge, an internal failsafe activates as a way of releasing this excess electricity. Unfortunately, that failsafe causes Voltorb and Electrode to spontaneously use self-destruct and explosion attacks to release this excess energy. The slightest bump is usually enough to set off this failsafe, which makes combat within close quarters exceptionally dangerous with both of these creatures. In their present form, Voltorb have little control over their own powers, and are prone to explode even as they roll around, in turn making them a physical hazard towards nearly all creatures that do not resist or are otherwise immune to the effects of their explosions.
It is also noted that Voltorb are one of only a few species of Pokemon known to have a unique variant within the confines of the Hisui region, the precursor to the modern Sinnoh region.
In this region, these creatures are electric grass types and are noted for having access to an energy ball attack, though otherwise they are very similar in combat performance to their Cantonian counterpart. While modern Voltorb are known for being easy to irritate and severe danger to all that are around them, Hisuian Voltorb are actually on the opposite end of the spectrum. This is likely because they have not modeled themselves off of harsh modern technology, instead seemingly existing as mimics of apricorn balls, in turn taking on their natural and softer biology, becoming living seed pods like the apricorns they're made from in the process. Despite the fact they are essentially plants as a result of their mimicry, these beasts show notable intelligence and are known to be rather docile and friendly towards others in a lot of cases, though this does not always endear them to others. In order to vent energy so they don't get agitated from storing it too much inside their bodies, these creatures have a small hole in the tops of their bodies that allow them to release excess electrical energy to keep themselves calm and happy. However, they tend to do this when they become extremely happy and excited, and they have little way to control these discharges, leaving many populated areas to plug the hole temporarily before booting these otherwise people-loving creatures out of their settlements. This is a shame for them too, as they tend to release laugh-like noises when they discharge their energy, their excitable minds seemingly thinking that it's fun to go about doing so with little care towards the consequences. Despite this, these creatures are easy to work with and only explode when they feel they have no other choice to defend themselves, rendering them surprisingly easy partners to raise, so long as one doesn't mind getting periodically shocked by them or as protection to counter this behavior. Like Voltorb, Electrode possess a failsafe in their bodies that uses explosions to vent excess electrical energy from their bodies and are commonly packed with more electricity than their bodies can safely handle, making their internal failsafes likely to go off with the slightest provocation. Unfortunately, Electrode take the threat posed by Voltorb to a whole new level by being able to almost control their internal failsafes fully, thus granting them the power to explode at will. Their appetite for electricity is also far greater and causes them to seek out electricity regardless of its form. As such, Electrode take the time to absorb this energy straight from the atmosphere, enjoy getting struck by lightning, and often drain power plants to the point of absolute shutdown. Electrode are further problematic in that they tend to store electricity at exceptionally high internal pressures. The slightest shock can cause a disruption of this internal pressure, setting them off instantly. Electrode understand this fact and often do nothing when the circuit capacity has been exceeded by an exceptionally high degree, sometimes letting themselves drift upon winds until they come into contact with something and explode. Or if they feel particularly bored, Electrode may simply decide to explode repeatedly as a way of amusing themselves. The only real benefits that Electrode gains strategically from absorbing excess electricity is a boost in movement speed and the ability to utilize the magnetic flux technique, which Voltorb cannot naturally learn. These benefits alone, however, do not make Electrode any safer to battle with.
It is lastly noted that, just like the pre-evolved form, Electrode are one of a few species of Pokémon known to have a unique variant within the confines of the Hisui region.
In this region, these creatures are also electric grass types and are noted for having access to Energy Ball and Chloroblast attacks, though otherwise they are still very similar in combat performance to their Cantonian counterpart. While the unique archaic form of Hisuian Voltorb normally renders them incapable of actually evolving naturally, given that they are living seed pods, exposure to the radiant energy of a leaf stone can cause the already odd forms to mutate further, in turn facilitating their evolution into Hisuian Electrode. Hisuian Electrode are said to have been one of only a select group of Pokemon that were blessed with cosmic power by Arceus in the times of the Hisui region, and served as a noble Pokemon of the Coronet Highlands in the time of that region. As a sharp counter to their pre-evolved form, Hisuian Electrode are constantly irritated as a result of them no longer being able to easily vent electricity, given that they now rest on the same hole that was once used as a release valve of sorts when in their pre-evolved state. As such, they are known to be highly aggressive, and while the apricorn-based bodily forms do offer them some protection, they otherwise share the mediocre defenses of their Cantonian counterpart and are thus not always suitable for serious combat. However, this does little to make them any less dangerous, as they can readily release burst electrical energy equivalent to the energy output of 20 lightning bolts at once, frying anything that gets even remotely close to them. Moreover, as plants, they are now able to use chlorophyll in their bodies to soak up the sun's rays and make energy that way, though their chlorophyll are much more efficient at storing energy than that of traditional plants. And they are further unique in that they can use this high energy capacity of their chlorophyll to produce a powerful attack unique to them, the Chloroblast attack, a concentrated beam of energy drawn from the stored energy that saps the energy reserves rapidly and thus has immense recoil to it, but is otherwise an extremely powerful attack that can make the most of what special strength they have. This as a whole renders them a surprisingly dangerous force to contend with if their extremely high movement speeds cannot be sufficiently slowed down to make them more vulnerable to attack, and given that they still have an above average base speed stat for fully evolved electric and even grass type Pokemon, and in turn have the highest base speed stat out of all grass type and non-legendary electric type Pokemon, this is far easier said than done.
Well, I can at least say that there are a lot of Pokemon out there that sort of scare me because of either their behavior or me being at a bit of a type disadvantage. The members of the Voltorb family scare me just because of the general destruction they tend to, and often do, cause because of their volatile and cheeky natures. These creatures earned the title of the Bomb Ball for a reason, for even as Voltorb, their explosive tendencies can make them a pain to deal with, even if their physical attack power isn't really strong enough to deal a great deal of direct damage, even with attacks like Self-Destruct and Explosion. But that's sort of the point. The moves are not there for actual combat, but to create as much damage to their surroundings as possible in order to create an avenue of sorts for them to escape through, or at least after they manage to come to after knocking themselves out. This can at least be mitigated by keeping careful watch over them and making sure they don't overflow with electrical power. But Electrode are such wild cards that any strategy for trying to really handle them is best just thrown out the window. They too might not be able to deal a ton of damage with their explosive attacks, but they can trigger them without warning and in turn are a serious hazard to any unarmored creatures in their midst. Thankfully, while they might not exactly be all that accessible to people these days, their Hisuian variants are a bit of a nice flip in terms of what to expect. Hisuian Voltorb, though sometimes rather childish and mischievous, are extremely friendly and really fun to play around with, so as long as you wear the proper protection needed for such an activity, you're fine. Hisuian Electrode, on the other hand, are much more like what you would expect them to be for an evolved Pokémon. Bigger, meaner, and far more aggressive, and with a unique signature attack that can actually deal a great deal of damage at the cost of half the damage done in recoil. As a whole, these strange creatures may not have the greatest of combat potential to some, but their blistering speed nonetheless makes them a terrible threat in the wild, especially if you aren't careful about how you approach them.
Though they may not have a great deal to offer in the way of serious combat potential, the members of the Voltorb family are still explosive threats that can more than make life hectic for those that can't avoid their explosive attacks. It might be all risk over reward for them, but that's just how these living bombs roll, and it seems to have done them more than a few favors in the wild.
Just do yourself a favor though, and try and keep them under control the best you can. They might not be impossible to train to obey commands, but if they get a little too overcharged or even just bored, you may have an explosive finale on your hands for them and anyone close by before a battle can really even get started.
Thank you for watching this video. It brings me great joy to be able to speak to you all in the world each and every time we meet like this, to explore the many different facets of both the world of Pokemon as we know it, and the world as we live it, through every adventure we have with Pokemon by our side. If you'd like to, please subscribe, ring the bell and all that jazz, to keep yourself updated on content uploads and other materials of the like. You can also follow me on Twitter if you'd like to know right away when something new is uploaded, and my written works, from which most of this is based on, can be found on DeviantArt. Links to both can be found in the description down below. Remember that the world of Pokemon is a place full of wonder and mystery, and you never know what to expect. So, stay vigilant, keep watch, and always be prepared for the unexpected. Until next time, trainers and friends of all sorts, have a wonderful time.